What's going on, guys? We're here at Enjuku Racing. Me and Ant, we're here. We're installing a set of BR coilovers on this Scion FRS, and we're gonna get this thing lowered and handling right.
Awesome. The Scion FRS chassis coming right out of the box. It's a pretty cool car. It's got a lot of sporty features to it. It also has great weight distribution front to rear. And a pretty much proven chassis for Formula Drift and a lot of global time attack, autocrossing. One of the best upgrades you can do for these cars to get a lot out of it is upgrading suspension, especially doing a set of fully adjustable coilovers from BC. So before we can go ahead and put on the new coilovers, we gotta get the old stuff up. You ready, Kevin?
Let's do it.
Kind of said let's do it at the same time.
It worked. It's like a collab.
Now we got the car up in the air and the wheels off. We're gonna go ahead and remove the factory suspension. It's pretty basic hand tools needed for this.
We're just gonna need a 19mm to take off the lower shock mount bolts. We got a 17mm hex head socket here that we're gonna need to get the sway bar and link off. And then in the back here, we've got a 12mm bolt to remove the factory brake line.
We're gonna go ahead and remove the ABS sensor off of the base, pressing this clip here, and then using a set of needle nose pliers, we can go ahead and remove the bottom clip.
Moving up here to our sway bar end link, we're gonna use a closed-in wrench on the nut, and then we're gonna use our Allen key here to hold the ball joint from spinning. We get our last piece off now, and now we get to move up to the top to get our final 3 bolts.
Once these 3 bolts are removed, pretty much the factory shock's out. So we'll have Kevin on top removing those, and I'll just hold the shock to make sure it doesn't just fall to the ground.
Yeah.
And it's out. The rear strut is held into the lower control arm by one 17mm bolt, but we are going to remove the sway bar end link also to get a little bit more motion to help get the strut out.
So now that Ant's got the lower shock mount bolts off the lower control arm, we can move into the trunk now and get the last 2 bolts and then remove the factory rear shock. And in the trunk under here, under this factory little piece, kind of pull it back here, and then you'll find your 2 bolts down hidden under this piece of carpet. So you can use your 14mm socket and start bringing those loose. This one off.
Factory strut is kind of just suspended in there in between the lower control arm. So since we removed the sway bar end link earlier, we should be able to just pull down and go ahead and pull the strut out.
Now that we've got the stock parts off the car, we can compare them next to the BR series coilovers to see kind of what the differences are between them. If you compare like the fronts, you'll notice the BC coilover is going to have a smaller shock. It'll give you a little bit more extra wheel clearance on the inside if you're going for a wider wheel that's going to poke a little bit on the inside as well as the outside. It's got its full height adjustability. And then up here at the top, you're gonna have 30-way adjustable dampening. That's gonna adjust the compression and rebound simultaneously. With just a couple clicks here, you can dial in the car for any kind of conditions on the track, or if you're just looking for a softer ride on the street, you can kind of dial it down as well. On this specific kit for this FRS, we've actually got the Swift Spring upgrade. The fronts include camber plates, so you can dial in your camber for your settings, for your alignment. And it includes a coil bearing for the top, so it'll prevent any kind of spring bind for when the car is actually steering and turning. The thing to remember is when you're swapping over to your new coilovers, you want to take over the clips for your ABS sensor line and swap it over to the new BC coilover. All right, so moving on to the rear here for these BR series coilovers for the FRS. A new feature that they started a couple months ago is they've actually got a recess here in their upper hat for the rear. The factory of these cars run a pretty short shock, so to have the additional little bit of travel built into the shock hat itself that Adds about a 50 mil extra travel, so you prevent the shocks from bottoming out on like the super low applications. It also has the same as the front, which was the 30-way dampening adjustability for the compression rebound, as well as the full ride height adjustability on the rear. And now we're ready to go put these on the car.
Putting the BCBRs back in is pretty simple. It's just gonna be the same way you took it out, using the same bolts. Kevin is putting the 14mm nuts back in the strut tower. You're gonna wanna make sure that the ABS line is routing back to the same position it was when it came off. Go ahead. Put the spindle back into the base. So what I'm doing right now is I'm installing the aftermarket sway bar end links that came with the BC BR series. They are adjustable. So what I went ahead and did is I set them to the factory sway bar end link length that came with the original strut. The reason that they are adjustable is when you're doing fine tuning to the suspension, you want to do corner balancing by about a 1/16 or so, but right now we can just leave them at the stock length. So we're gonna go ahead and install the rears, and it's pretty much the same as the front, just gonna put it back in the same way they came out.
We just finished with installing a set of the BC BR series coilovers on this FRS. Up next is we're going to get it up on the alignment machine to just double check that our toe is all within spec so we're not destroying our tires really fast. So that's our end for today.
Thanks for watching. See you later. I'm done.